Democrats are going to win control of the Senate in November. They need to flip at least 4 seats. And the likeliest flip is probably North Carolina, where Republican Tom Tillis is retiring and Democratic nominee, we spoke to him earlier this week, Roy Cooper, is very popular. Democrats see another chance in Maine with Republican Susan Collins getting a serious challenge from Graham Plattner. In Ohio, Republican Senator John Husted is barely ahead in the polls as former Senator Sherrod Brown makes quite a comeback bid. In Alaska, Republican incumbent Dan Sullivan is facing a very strong candidate in former Congresswoman Mary Peltola. Democrats also have hopes in Iowa and Texas, for good reason. But along with flipping 4 seats somewhere, they need to defend the seats they already have, like in New Hampshire. And last year, New Hampshire senior senator announced she would retire at the end of this term, leaving the seat wide open. The primary isn't actually until September, but each party has a very clear frontrunner. On the Republican side, it's former Senator John Sununu, who lost the seat to Shaheen in the 2008 blue wave. For the Democrats, it's Congressman Chris Pappas, who went to Washington in the blue wave of 2018. This is a race with a lot of interesting dynamics at play. Sununu was recruited to run by Donald Trump. Sununu comes from a New Hampshire Republican dynasty of sorts. His father and brother each served as governor of the state. As Semaphore puts it, the Sununu name is so strong in New Hampshire that it even obscures who exactly is on the ballot. Is it Sununu the father, the brother, the one who lost his Senate seat and is trying again? It's very confusing. As Chris Pappas puts it, quote, there is Sununu confusion. Republicans are also pouring millions into this race, evidence of just how hopeful they are for a potential pickup. The recent polling has not favored them really at all. A new survey published last week shows Congressman Pappas leading John Sununu in a head-to-head matchup, registered voters in an online survey saying they prefer Pappas over Sununu by 6 points. Joining me now is Congressman Chris Pappas, Democratic representative for New Hampshire's 1st District and a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate. As I just mentioned, you are slightly favored in the polls right now, but it's shaping up to be a very competitive race. I know you have to keep people focused on that. What should people understand about the race and the dynamics happening in New Hampshire right now?
Well, it's good to be on with you, Jen, and I appreciate the summation there in the way that the battleground has expanded over the course of the last year and a half, and Democrats are competing in some pretty unlikely states to flip Senate seats. But we've got to do our job in New Hampshire to keep this Senate seat blue if we're going to flip control of the Senate and ultimately hold Donald Trump accountable for his actions and get to work on behalf of the American people to build a fairer economy and get things moving. The fact is, New Hampshire is a purple state. We are always right in the middle. This was the closest state that Kamala Harris won in the last election. Republicans have a trifecta at the state level. They have a growing registration advantage. And so Republicans are incredibly interested in this particular seat, in part because they recruited a member of a pretty well-known political family, the Sununu family, who's been in politics since before I was born. So this is a household name. There's a lot of familiarity there, but there's also a lot of contrast that we're going to be able to draw. John Sununu was in the Senate before. He was down the line for George W. Bush. He supported forever wars. He supported privatizing Social Security. He put people on the Supreme Court that gave us the Dobbs decision. So we've got a lot to talk about. We've just got to navigate this climate where the outside interests, the corporate special interests are dumping a ton of money in New Hampshire and muddying the waters. And that's why I urge people to go to chrispappas.org, join the fight, help us hold the seat and flip the Senate.
Let's talk about what you want to do in the Senate. I mean, this week, I should know you co-sponsored the No Cashing In Act, which is, of course, a bipartisan bill that would require former members of Congress to file financial disclosures. It's particularly relevant this week, given we all just looked at the 927-page financial disclosure of Donald Trump. I was just talking with Eric Lipton about that. It's quite illuminating, financial disclosures can be. Tell us about where that stands, why it's so important, how central is it for you as you look ahead into what you want to do in the Senate?
Well, look, we've got to fundamentally change the way Washington works. People don't trust that they're members of Congress, that the president, members of the executive branch are working in the public interest. And so we've got to create bright lines, go after the corruption and the grift that's on full display. I mean, it's out in the open and it's been chronicled on the show tonight about the billions of dollars that Donald Trump has added to his bottom line through stock trades and issuing a meme coin and all sorts of business dealings. But there are questions about Congress, too, about members trading stock and about the fact that people get really comfortable the longer they're in Washington. So we've got to break the linkage between members and outside corporate special interests. We have to go after some of these practices that erode trust in our system. And ultimately, we need public servants that are working for the public good. And I think there are leadership members on both sides of the aisle that, frankly, are fine with things just the way they are. We've got to address this corruption issue, and not just with Donald Trump, but with people in the halls of Congress and all throughout our government who are doing the bidding for their own purposes and for their corporate backers, but not ultimately for the people.
Earlier this year, there's a lot of dynamics happening in New Hampshire that are happening nationally people may not be aware of. The Department of Homeland Security canceled an ICE prison facility they were planning to build in your state after relentless protests. There's also been intense local pushback against plans to build a big data center elsewhere in New Hampshire. What have you been hearing from voters about that issue in particular?
Well, look, in this era where Donald Trump's trying to build an imperial presidency, where he believes that he can meddle in local affairs, where he's creating this power structure that's incredibly top down. People want to be heard. They want to know that their communities are going to be respected. And we saw that play out in Merrimack, New Hampshire, where there were plans to build one of these mass detention centers housing thousands of individuals. And the community spoke with one voice: Republicans, independents, Democrats, local officials, folks that were talking about this not making the community any safer. The issue became too hot to handle for our Republican governor and for Kristi Noem, and they scrapped those plans. So I think this is an important view into how we can build coalitions, how we bring people along who aren't just part of the Democratic base, but are processing things the same way. This overreach by the administration on immigration enforcement, the added costs with respect to the tariffs, the cuts to health care, these hit everyone across the board. And folks are looking for accountable government. They want to have their voice heard. They want to know that they can decide what comes next in this election. So as we reflect on this 250th anniversary of our independence, we've got to make sure that the power is in the hands of the people in our democracy. That's what we're going to be fighting for. And so many other candidates across the country are fighting for, to flip the majorities in the House and Senate, which are so essential to confronting the damage Trump's causing.
Congressman Chris Pappas, thank you.